Howdy, howdy, everybody, and welcome back to another Lord of Heroes video. Today, we're about to go over the very end of 2020 in December tier list, and we're going to talk about all the raid and every hero that we have in the game so far, including the heroes that haven't hit global as of yet. Before we get into the tier list and why everything is, I want to give out a few disclaimers stating that if you haven't seen any of my tier lists before, they do fluctuate. Things change depending on the usage, balance patches, new heroes. Maybe we discover something new or we put more investment into a hero. We, by you guys, the community as well, and we just learn more about the game. So things can change. So take it all with a grain of salt. This is just one man's opinion and some of the Discord as well, which you should be a part of if you're not. Some of you guys have helped, with me sculpting this tier list. So I appreciate you guys hanging out and chatting with me about it. So I think we're at a point where we have it now. Now I will say that we have changed the way that we formatted the raid. I'm not going to go into full detail why, because hopefully this video is not more than 20 minutes long, because we're about to go over every single hero as best as we can possible. We're going to break it up from each tier, starting from C, going all the way up to the top. Okay, so first things first, the C tier. All right, no. Better yet, first things first. Let me say that some heroes are in a position that they're in and maybe lower tier because they only provide like damage or they have very little utility in their kit. So it doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them the worst hero possible because some people might be like, well, I built this hero. This hero's strong. You should see the damage I did. Well, damage is not enough. And then there's other heroes that are like really high tier when it comes to damage, and they deserve to be where they are because of that reason. While other heroes is like, yeah, all right. So Greenberg. Greenberg can be great if you do build him for damage. He is a guardian, so I mean technically he should be tanky, but there are people that built him out there. I'm not sure how many people on global has done it, but there is a in particular YouTuber that does get their bird game to on. Yeah, so he doesn't really provide any debuffs that is needed for the raid. Like you can't CC the boss. So heroes that provide CC just doesn't do it unless they have some other utility in their kit. So he's kind of out of it there. Same with Redbird. Redbird has potential with debuff extension on S2, but it's not enough, and it's S2. Plus you have to put skill investment, and based on all the other content in the game, if you're not maining this hero, he's definitely not providing anything for you. So this is why the birds always stay at the bottom of the tier list. I think I've moved up Mikhail in recent ones, but I put him back down into C because it's like if you're not maining Mikhail, he does nothing but damage, and damage is not enough. Like damage is not enough. He does tremendous damage. So if he is like we want it your main or something that you have been building and you want to put forth investment into him, by all means he can carry your damage to some degree. But he's C tier because that's all he provides is nothing but damage, and he's a pain to build. Blue 9. He's great in other content of the game, like Obelisk and PvP. Same with the Green Water here that's also at the bottom. That they good at providing CC and tanky sustainability for your team. They do nothing for the raid. C tier, hands down. All right, let's move on to the B tier. The B tier. As biased as I feel about the Blue Charlotte, she's definitely not as good as what I would like her to be, or at least as much as I hype her up in Discord because I like her and I've seen how she's been used effectively. Plus, I have her built on one of my accounts, so I know what she's capable of. She's really tanky, hard to kill, but the thing is, she needs to be paired with specific heroes, and we're not going to get into like complete strategies or anything like that because that can take up a whole video in its own. But some heroes kind of need other heroes to be paired with them for them to be able to shine, plus skill investment as well. So she's B tier because she does provide a lot of sustain for the team, but just not as much as the other clerics. All right, Light Johan. Light Johan here, he can be decent on his damage side of things. He doesn't have really high multipliers, and he does have an attack break on his S2, his burst can give him a attack buff and a defense buff, so he can like really kind of like do things on his arm. But if he's not your main, he's just another one of those heroes where it's like, Same with the Red Johan. I think the Red Johan provides a little more utility. Like his utility is up there, and his sustain, if he does, if you do put him in a burst slot, and we're gonna talk about the burst after we get through just who you bring and everything a little later. But if you it's like he can be great. Like if he's your main, then that's good. And you're gonna hear me say this quite often for a lot of heroes, especially in these lower tiers. Like if you're maining these heroes, if you plan to use these heroes as your damage dealers, they are excellent. Like probably S tier in terms, or A tier maybe in terms of damage, depending on the hero or what we're talking about for the heroes. But as further as their usefulness team wise, they just don't cut it. Now, Red Johan, he do have his crit rate buff and his crit damage buff, which can possibly be proc. Plus, he has heals, but you really want to use him for damage if you're going to use him for anything. You're not about to rely on his utility to really sustain your team because that's just not what he does. Then the Green Lyrae, once again, another one. If you're maining her, insane damage multiplier numbers. She's selfish, so she doesn't really do anything for your team in the raid. She could be a good solo damage kind of unit depending on the strategy that you use, but B tier because she just doesn't have anything else going on for her. Green Mah-Lon. Green Mah-Lon, she turn bar boost, she can possibly do some damage, but I mean, outside of PvP, I don't think she has any other place in this game. Like maybe there's somebody that's such a diehard that they want to build her and show how good she is, but it's like, yo, if the only thing you're doing is showing how much damage a hero does in this game, every hero does in this game. So B tier. Moving on. Blue Pup. All right, with the Blue Pup, great damage. He was like definitely hard meta for a lot of us early on in the game. Think there's still people that kind of use him, maybe PvP wise. He could be useful in Obelisk as well, but I mean, outside of damage, he does nothing in the raid that's going to be useful. With the changes to the raid giving us the extra turn bar reduction, it winds up hurting you more than helping you unless you have a team comp built around turn bar cycling, so you can get extra damage before the boss completely cuts your team. Some of you may know what I'm talking about, others may not, but just trust me. Green Sophie. She does have some a pretty unique kit. She does have a bit of utility, but raid is definitely not the place for her. That's what I have to say about that. The raid is definitely not the place where she's going to do much. The Green Olivia, great if you run in a turn bar cycling team, but once again, she's the official reduced turn gauge. So you're asking for the boss to just be like, oh, you want to slow me down? Well, I just cut everybody anyway. So if she's not in a turn bar cycling team, properly speed tuned and geared and worked around and practice and all of that good stuff together, she just winds up hurting you more than helping you in that aspect. But I mean, you could have her as your main and she just dishes out damage instead. So yeah, I mean, yeah, this is why she's B tier. Same with Astrid. Great damage, but that's it. That's all she has, and it's really only on her burst. Possibly her S2. I think her S2 does pretty good damage, but her S1 is kind of mediocre, about average to most other heroes in terms of damage multiplier. So it's really not that great. But yeah, damage, and that's all she has. Red Fram, gonna be insane when we get Red Fram in like the next 7 to 8 days or whatever it is. Um, for PvP and Obelisk and that kind of stuff. But Raid, no. 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 Just no. Red Chrome, great damage, selfish just like the Green Lyrae, good for other content. Raid, no. Just no. It's just not that guy. Blue Lumi, same problem as everybody else. Can be useful in everything but the raid. She's more of a liability than an actual help. Like she just takes turns because of her S1 and she just wastes turns. because of her S1. It's like if she's the only option for you to have in your team, you're better off just leaving that slot open. Like she she not gonna be helpful at all. Red Pup, his burst is nice. The damage that he will reflect back on the boss is insignificant. Damage, it's B tier. Everybody in B tier probably has the same problem almost. It's just they do damage and that's it, nothing else. Same as the blue asterisk. Like she does damage, nothing else. Nothing else that's going to be useful for the raid. So yeah, if these heroes you plan to main for damage, then by all means they're going to be great. Outside of that, once again, moving on. A tier. I think we actually moved pretty fast. Well, Buck don't look good.
Nope.
A tier. We get into some more turn bar boosting with the Dark Rosanna. That's pretty much the only thing she does for you. She's a bot. She's bot synergy for turn bar boosting. Turn bar boosting, I don't think is absolutely necessary. But since we are in a blue Nessa meta where we're relying on the revive, being rezzed back and then she getting a turn and boosting your team gives you that opportunity and that chance to be able to move again. Your damage do more damage, cycle again before they die, and have to do it all over. So she definitely deserves the A tier for being useful. You see where we're going with this? The utility is great. All right, the red asterisk. This one is I've been kind of like I've been kind of torn between is she B, is she A, because all she really does is provide damage, but all of her skills scale off of her speed. So the amount of damage that she does in comparison to all the other heroes that only provide damage is significantly higher because she can practically do insane damage on all of her skills. So she definitely deserves A tier for that. Then we got Helga. Helga's been great and has been useful since the beginning of the game. Her usefulness will not stop. She's A tier all around. She has a great kit, a bit of self-sustain, some sap, and some decent multipliers on damage. So she's just a great damage dealer all around, and this is why she deserves A. Like, I think most people could agree there. Chrome. Bot synergy for the turn bar boosting, but he does give that health regen on his S2. So that makes him a little more useful. Probably more useful than Rosanna. Plus, when you skill him up, he comes to a 2-turn cooldown. Only him and Arslan are the only turn bar boosters that come to 2-turn cooldowns. Everyone else is a 3-turn cooldown, even including the blue Yashua, which we'll be talking about once we get up into the Nessa tier. But moving on, Zyra. Zyra is nice. Zyra is nice because she's good for just tanking. Like especially on Green Day, she's a solid solo tank or just pseudo tank for your second squad. Well, on that day to just be able to help in that kind of way. I know I'm not explaining that for it to make the most sense, but I'm sure some of you get it. But she's definitely great in that aspect. But she also has the attack break on her S2 and then a defense break on her burst. And I believe if you skill it up, it can go into a 3-turn death break. If I'm not mistaken, I'm actually going to take a look here. Yeah, it's automatically 2 turns, and when you get it to level 5 in the skills, it becomes a 3-turn death break. 3-turn death break is insane. Like I've seen her skilled up on a few people's accounts, and then there is one YouTuber in particular that is a Zyra main, and they use her a lot for their raid. Like, and then seeing just the 3-turn death break is insane. She's literally the only hero I believe in a game that has a 3-turn death break. I don't even think Frems, even though it's on S1, goes to 3 turns. And let me take a look to confirm. Yeah, hers doesn't even go to 3 turns. So that is something that's unique in her kit. Because her S1 doesn't do anything for the raid, she's not S tier. Because like if she had like maybe a damage down or something that was on S1, that would be busted, that would be broken. She definitely would be A tier. Maybe even I mean she definitely would be S tier, but maybe even like Nessa tier at that point, just because how great her kit is. Alright, the Red Lumi. The Red Lumi is a little questionable, but she does provide a lot of damage and some of the utility in her kit. I mean, the turn bar reductions is not the greatest thing, but she does have a death break also on her burst, and you can never have enough death breaks. Like, those things are really handy to maximizing your damage in a raid because you're trying to kill the boss before the boss kill you. So the faster you can do damage, and the more damage you can do before the boss gets turns and do damage to you, the better. So she definitely shines and excels there. I feel like I'm not going to be able to keep it under 20 minutes, but we're getting there. All right, next we do have the Red 9, who has Sap on his S1, which is pretty cool. It only lasts for one turn, but it's still decent just to have extra Sap on your team. So if like you can just like have a whole squad just dedicated to landing sap, and then like your main squad doing pure damage. So it's like it's good stuff. Good stuff. Then he also has a death break that's on his S2, which once again can't have enough death breaks. So I like to see him at the A tier. He could be a possible B, but I think he's A tier. He's pretty solid. All right, Blue Sophie. Now, Blue Sophie is a special one. She not only does damage, she does have a attack break on S1. The fact that she has an attack break definitely gives her edge above some of the other damage dealers. Like, if you have a little more utility in your kit, then of course I'm going to be like, yeah, something that works against the boss, and breaking the boss's attack and at every chance you can get is great. Like, and it's for 2 turns with no skill ups that she can break the attack. Some, like most other heroes, you actually have to skill up to just get that 2 turns. So she definitely get the edge over a lot of heroes there. Maybe she deserve a S now that I'm looking at her skills and like really thinking about it. But right now, yeah, she's definitely a solid A. The Dark Nine. Dark Nine provides a ton of sap plus debuff extension on his burst, but you're probably not going to be able to line up that burst perfectly. But the amount of sap that he provides plus a 2 turn sap, he can land 2 saps for 2 turns on his S2, which is the only hero that I believe that has a 2 turn sap. Everyone else is like a 1 turn sap, and he provides 2 of them at that. Then S1 he also provides sap, so he can just like do a bunch of damage through via sap, and that's all you really need for him. And with the sap buff, it does cap, but it adds up. It adds up over time, and it makes him a solid hero. So this is why I have him as A tier in terms of his utility and usage. Now let's take a look at the blue Olivia, who got a bit of self-sustain in her heals, but she's mostly going to be like one of your red day heroes. Like, if you have her, red day is going to be a real good day for you. Granted, you have like something else to do damage. I mean, you could have her as your main damage dealer. She's one of those heroes that if she didn't have as much utility in her kit, she would probably be a B tier just because you can use her for damage and that'll be it. But she does buff herself on burst if you were to use her. I mean, for that, I wouldn't exactly recommend her being the best in that usage, but she does have a death break on her S2, which gives her extra utility and great to use. Green Aleph is a solid one that I think a lot of people should pick up in their contract, and I think people were sleeping on because they got so hype about the Red Lumi. Oh, Red Lumi, lots of damage, blah blah blah. Great kit, she's broken, she's OP. Even I said that, but was sleeping on how strong the Green Aleph is in a raid. The fact that she can provide a shield to whoever has the lowest HP at the time, plus herself to make herself sustain longer so she can protect her team better, is great. She has she has on her S1, when she attacks, she boosts the attack gauge of the highest attack in the team. So it will be for the squad she's in. She won't do it in any other squad, just the squad that she's in. So your damage dealer is going to effectively take more turns. Work real well for a turn cycling team, if you remember what I said previously in this video. Red Aleph, she has a bit of self-sustain. a bit of self-sustain that I would say in her S2. But she really just does damage. Like without the self-sustain, even though it's not much and she's going to waste the skill anyway, she would probably be B tier, honestly. But she's A tier for now. I mean, if you think she's B tier, say that in the comments. We'll move her down. Like, yeah, please let me know what you think of the tier list. If you think somebody should be higher and lower, that is important. We can discuss about it. You give your thoughts, I give my thoughts, and we make some changes. The blue Beretta definitely has a lot of utility in her kit. A bunch of sustains. She does got a bit of RNG in her kit, but more than likely it's going to happen more than it doesn't. The same like with the red Beretta, who I do currently have. So I'm like, yes to her. She definitely deserves A tier for what she can provide. The RNG makes her a little less than S tier, but still solid. The Dirty Bird, sustain and damage. He can throw away his sustain just like the red Aleph can on his S2 because they always just use S2 soon as the fight start. But he does have that good multipliers on that skill as well. Plus his burst does true damage. So the A tier for that reason. So I'm sure my editing skills is not that great. So by now you'll realize that 20-minute mark that I was talking about was a lie. I'm sorry. Please bear with me because we want to go over everything because we're closing this year out real good. We want to get us a good raid tier list going for next year coming up. But we're going to move over to this red Helga who has an attack break on S1, which can be skilled up to 2 turns. That's great. Defense break on S2, which can be skilled up to 2 turns, which is also great. Her burst doesn't do anything, but I mean, she has utility in both these skills. I don't think enough people really have picked her up and played with her. And it makes sense because it's like so many heroes to build, plus the niche that she fills. There's so many other heroes that you probably already have and that you get that can fill that role. So it's like she's not necessary. It's more of if you're gonna main her or if you just like Helga in general and just want to build all the Helgas, she's gonna be a great one to build. I wouldn't sleep on her though. She's definitely gonna be useful for Green Day. Like at some point, we all should have her built. Green Lumi, whenever we get her, she comes with a bunch of utility in her kit. Speed slows, attack breaks. I believe does she got a sleep? I don't think her sleep does nothing. Defense break on burst, sleep on S2, and attack break on S1. Yeah, she doesn't have a sleep. That's blue Lumi with the sleep. But Green Lumi has nothing but all the best like debuffs you can possibly have. And she a guardian, so she's pretty tanky. Definitely solid A tier. Green 9 damage. I think this is most of my bias because I do have him built, but he probably should be B because he's squishy as all ever. But maybe A is good because I mean I got Helga in A. She's not really super tanky either. Squishy, you can definitely build him. Yeah, it's because he does have some self sustain. Like his S1 and give him a bit of sustain that he doesn't die right away. But you definitely will have to make sure he is built a little bit tanky for him to perform right. But his damage multipliers is real good. Like his burst, insane the amount of damage that he can do when you build him for full damage. Like he rivals some of the top damage dealers in the amount of damage that he could do. If he was a bit tankier, like if he wasn't a striker, he was like a warrior. He definitely would be like S tier and maybe even Nessa tier. That's how good he truly is. But once again, it could be my bias speaking, but I mean, I use him a lot, and in comparison to some of the other things I have, it really shows. Green Pup. Green Pup was really at the bottom of the tier list before, but because Sap got buff, I think he definitely deserves the A tier. Because Sap is so much stronger, so you can build him around a Sap based team and provides lots of extra damage. And he's a warrior, so he's going to be a little bit tankier. Oh, he does inflict 2 Saps. Does it skill up to? Nope, it's still just one turn like everything else. Same on his S1. So he got 2 Saps in his kit from S1 to S2, which is great. And if you use him in burst, he can self-sustain, which is pretty decent for him. I don't think it'd be the most necessary thing for this hero in particular, but just his saps alone is enough for him to excel. So you can have him pretty tanky and let him just do his thing with saps along the other sap heroes. The blue water. Now there is one YouTuber that that can do some tremendous damage with the blue water. He's just like Red Astrid, which his skills scale off his speed, so he can do some insane numbers when you like have him built properly. Hopefully you get lucky on gear because you're gonna need a decent amount of speed plus crit rate, crit damage. But the scaling is pretty good. Like I don't know exactly the multipliers with the scaling, but from the numbers that I have seen, where doing his burst and he does 1 million damage crit. That's a lot of damage. Like that definitely rivals like the top damage dealers in the game. But he deserves A because he's definitely not an easy one to build for most of us, even though he is a free to play hero. And last in the A tier, the Red Nessa. Now, first I was throwing her in the B tier, but then I had to think about it. Like she is a step above the Blue Charlotte. They actually work pretty good together though. But like her death buff is great. Her burst is okay, but it's not reliable. Like her death buff definitely a little more reliable. It can skill up into 3 turns. I mean, if you do skill her up, I recommend you stop after that and not put anything else into her. Hopefully, you get lucky. Other than that, I wouldn't recommend skilling her up at all. But let's move over into the S tier. Now, in the S tier, I know someone was questioning me about the green Lapis being a tier above the red Lapis. I feel like now, since the change to the raid, he's not exactly a must-have. Like on light day, where the boss have a crit damage buff, it would be nice to have the crit rate down and the crit damage down, so you kind of mitigate a lot more of the damage that the boss does. Other than that, every other boss is fine with attack break and damage down. Like you can use him, but he has to be used in his burst slot because that's the main reason that you will have him in the fight. Other than that, he's definitely not the most necessary hero, but definitely one that I want, and I know many of you want to have as well. But he surely deserves S tier, possibly Nessa tier, but for sure S tier. Red Yashua, his burst gives you an attack break and a defense break for 2 turns. If he lands them both, no other hero has that. That is great. Plus, if you put him in with a little bit of damage, you can have a lot of damage on top of the skill because he is a striker. I mean, you can build him to be a little bit tanky. It's hard to build strikers tanky because naturally they're built for damage. They're not really built to like tank like that. So you can get him on a decent 2-1-1 build, and he can perform really well for you there. Not to mention that he like to buff himself with attack and invincibility, so that's great when he first starts. So he takes no damage if his team gets hit, and then he comes back, burst you out, boom, boom, boom. More utility for the team. Excellent hero. Blue Basilica, she has damage down, and then her burst gives the most saps that you can put in on in one time in the game. Plus, it's the max saps period. So it's like, yeah, she definitely deserves S. Mostly because of the damage down though. But since the sap buff, like, she's definitely shot up there in my opinion. I would have to say, like Mah-Lon, pretty okay sustain for your team. That's pretty much all she got. She might be A tier, honestly. Like I'm not even sure if I really should keep her in S tier, but she's a solid. She's solid though with her ability to sustain. I think it's because she's a sniper and snipers are needed, and it's like to fill that niche, you get heals on top of getting that surge set, giving you more burst for your team. I think that's what really makes her shine in the position she's in, and the reasoning behind me giving her an S. The Red Rosanna, which wish I had. She has a great shield plus some good damage that you can stack on as well. So her getting her shield up and I guess the cooldown can go into a 3 turns, but she gets a lot of burst gauge on that skill as well. Plus, her shield can get stronger through skill ups, so she's a solid one. Shields are really great for the raid because that just mitigates extra damage that could be done to your raw health. So having a shield on top of you does protect you more. Like from the videos I've seen her use, then she tend to die first in the team. But I mean, yeah, she's really a damage dealer because she's a striker. So it's like you can only make her so tanky. But the fact that she provides a shield for the team is great in its own. Like Vanessa, lots of utility. AOE attack buff. Like if you have Arslan, she's a solid pick for your second squad for having extra damage, heals, sustain. She does have an invincibility on top of the attack buff. So she's a really solid hero, a unique kit that no other hero has. And she is the last hero that has damage down. Well, she's the paid hero that has damage down on her S1. And the last hero that has damage down is the Red Mah-Lon, which she does have sap on her S2, but the damage down is just, and she's a sniper. Like damage down and a sniper is like that's a lot in one kit. So she's just excellent to have for your team. If you don't have the green, I mean, if you don't have the blue Lucy yet or have her built up, Red Mah-Lon definitely do a great job for that position. Fram, um, she's unique because she's the only hero without skill ups to have a 2-turn death break on S1. So she can have a death break coming almost every turn. Plus, her burst gives a 2-turn attack break. So that's great, and she's a guardian, so she's tanky. So on those red days, she's a solid solo tank or pseudo tank, depending on Lyre. Lyre is like that counter piece because of the counter set and being able to land her death break on the boss's turn. So it can be a little more reliable when you do have it. And she does an okay amount of damage, but really it's just the death break is what you want from her. You want her to be able to provide that, and that's really it. It's just the way she provides it is what makes her S tier. Like other than that, like she will probably be an A tier hero for the raid, if not less. Green Lucy, S2, tremendous damage. Scales on boss current HP, so the higher the boss HP, the more damage it's gonna do. She just have a lot of damage in her kit, plus a bunch of self-sustain in her kit, which gives her S tier. Light Olivia, most expensive hero in the game if you buy her. The longest grind it would take to farm up the renown to get her. And her multipliers on all her skills are nuts. Yeah, enough said there. Like Sophie, tons of damage, great skill multipliers, plus a bit of utility, if I'm correct. She can stack up and get damage. She has a AoE death break on S2, and she has true damage on her burst. And all her skills do damage. Like really good damage. So she's definitely above a lot of the other heroes in terms of what she provides plus damage. Beretta, a lot of utility and damage. Like Beretta gives out some buffs. With those buffs, it can really help your team. Like speed buff, she got a lot of extra self buffs that she does. She can really do some work for your team when she's used, and she's a great damage dealer, especially for Green Day. All right, the last tier, the Nessa tier. Now, of course, at the top, the very top, we have Blue Nessa because the meta is just Blue Nessa. She's insane. Once you get her skilled up, maxed out, she pretty much carries your raid for your main team. There is some strategies where you do to use her for your secondary team, so you can keep your main damage dealer a little bit protected more. We're not going to go over strategies because once again, this video will be longer than what it is now. I don't think there's much that I can say unless you just new to the game and new to the channel, but her revive is her main utility, bunch of heals in her kit. Plus with the cleric set, she just gives extra healing um per turn. She can sustain herself pretty well. She just does it all. She does it all, and that's what makes her great. Now, a close runner up to her will be the Green Charlotte, and controversially, maybe better in some aspects. It's just once you get your team like really built out, you get a bunch of 60s, a lot of skill ups in your team. There is an argument for Green Charlotte being better once she's maxed out as well because she provides a shield, and with a well built team, your team is going to have a less chance of dying with the shield stacked on them than they would if they didn't have the shield. But until you get to that point in the game, Blue Nessa definitely wins by a landslide in her capabilities. But I wouldn't sleep on Green Charlotte. She's definitely going to be one that you want to have some skill investment in later on down the line because she's going to carry your squad too, and she's going to carry your Blue Day. Green Lapis, who should be your main damage dealer for everything but Red Day. Because he just does insane numbers in his damage. Plus, he has a lot of self sustain, which in some cases, for many of us, our Blue Nessa would die before he does. So yeah, that's just him. Who could do more damage but just doesn't have any sustain is the blue Aleph. Aleph has the same burst as Green Lapis, but what makes her different is her S2 is the same skill. So she has a lot of damage that she can add. Slap a leech set on her, and then she has way more than enough sustain to last her. Her S1 is trash though. Like she does like no damage on S1. Like the multiplier for that is just horrible. But I mean, with the S2 and a burst like she does, she don't really need a good S1 to shine. Then we have Arslan here. He's been in a league of his own for the longest because he just provides so much utility. Plus, he can do damage if you use him that way. I don't really recommend it. I think his utility is better than his damage because there's so many other better options for damage dealers. But you can clump him in there. You can hybrid build. I mean, AOE attack buff plus turn bar boost. You can't beat that. And his S1 gives you an attack break skilled up is 2 turns. Solid hero. Blue Yashua, best turn bar booster in the game. Like literally, once you have him max skilled, he can take you from 2 burst all the way to max burst with the burst formation. Even though you don't have burst formation for the raid specifically, he's still going to give a lot of burst on his S2 because S2 skills generally give the most burst, and he's a sniper. So best of both worlds with getting a lot of burst and being able to burst frequently opposed to the amount of burst that we're getting right now where we have to have like 2 to 3 snipers to just make up for his capability as just being in the only sniper of one of 2 snipers in your team. Then we have last but not least the light Zyra, who is one of our newest heroes as well. She came out bustedly, brokenly, powerfully stupid, like for real. She's our first guardian who has insane damage number multiplier things, and that's just because her burst does the 5 times stack just like the blue Aleph and the green Lapis does. So she gives a tremendous amount of damage through there. Plus, she gets 2 spirit cost reductions once max skill, so it takes it from 4 spirit to 2 spirit. So she can use this skill frequently if you building her out for damage. Then, yeah, her first skill gives you a speed reduction. It does give a reduction to action gauge, which, of course, you really don't want that or care for that too much. It helps a little bit, but hurts in the long run. But speed reduction is still kind of okay. It's better once skilled up because you get 2 turns, so you get that full speed reduction after that first turn. The boss cuts you, you'll really see the difference. I think speed reduction on top of attack power reduction might be a little bit better. I haven't really tested to see like how good it is, so don't quote me on that. Then we have what can scale up to from a four turn cooldown to a 3 turn cooldown, and that's her second skill, which she can increase the defense for all your team for 2 turns plus boost your action gauge. Like she gives you turn bar with this skill. You get a defense buff and a turn bar boost in one skill. That is insane. You couldn't ask for anything better and in your first or your second squad in the raid. Plus it goes from 30% to a 40% action gauge boost. You can't beat that. Like I don't even have words for that. So this is the list right now. This video is pretty long. So the second half of this list I will do another video for, so it just doesn't get any longer than what it is. But the next half is going to talk about the burst and who you should be putting in the burst for the raid. So we have a whole complete tier list for that. I actually give you guys a little snippet of it. So this is kind of what it looks like. So in the next video, we're going to talk about who you should put in the burst and why you should put them in the burst type of situation. So I hope this has helped you understand a little more about the heroes, their usage in the raid. And if it did, make sure you smash that like button. If it didn't, leave a comment down in the comment section below. I can't make better content if you don't give me some type of criticism. Like, yo, don't be like, yo, your content is horrible, blah, 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 blah. But let me know how you feel so I can improve and make better content for you guys. As well, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Turn those post notifications on so you can see the next video when it goes live, because we got to record that video after recording this one so we can have that ready to go live as well. And this is your host, Gamer Dude 2088, and I will see you guys in the next video. I'm out. Deuces.